Tsu'ika. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the book Cuun Joha, Our Language, Mando'a to English Dictionary by J. Mereel. So, if you are just finding out about this book, same. I only learned about this book about a week ago, but I ordered it instantly. I don't know what I was expecting, but it definitely turned out to be interesting nonetheless. I will say now that the opinions expressed in this review are my own, but I will try to be purely analytical from a cultural standpoint. So, what do I have to say about it? A great many things, but let's start with an overview. So, this book is penned by someone going by J. Mereel, of the Facebook group calling themselves the True Mandalorians. Now, I was slightly taken aback by that, but I didn't want to let it interfere with how I viewed the book. You know, people can call themselves whatever they want. The book is an explanation of the Mando'a language in its grammar. It's also an expansion of the vocabulary by thousands of words. And it has a section about the culture as well. It also includes its own version of Mando'a, the Mando'a script. How well it accomplishes the goals of the book is debatable, but that's why I'm making this review. So, let's begin with the positives about the book. It has a vast amount of new words. That is one of the things sorely lacking in Mando'a at present. A great many of these words are very useful as well, and in fact, I may even use some of them, either as is or with some slight modification. Some of them fit better than others. The new script is also interesting. They created this new script as a means of avoiding copyright infringement, which makes sense. It does retain some of the issues related to the original script. Primarily, a lot of the letters are hard to tell apart at a glance, but I will say I do think it's an improvement over the original, and it also looks slightly easier to write. That being said, the script is of least importance in my opinion, as it isn't very often used in practice. I will also commend its inclusion of the grammar section, as it is mostly well structured and concise. However, I'd like to move on to the negatives now, and I'll start with that. The grammar section in some places outright copies word for word lines from Karen Travis's Quick Grammar Guide, copyright Lucasfilm. However, it's not the copyright that I care about, but the notorious inaccuracies present within the original guide, which are carried over to this book. For example, the most well-known being the improper pronunciation of the letter C. It is given exactly as KT puts it, C pronounced as K when it comes before the letter A at the beginning of a word, and pronounced like S when it comes before other vowels at the beginning or in the middle of a word. However, this is inaccurate. Though I understand this mistake, as I myself have made it when I made my first pronunciation video, but it definitely should have been addressed in this book like I addressed it in the description of my video. The proper pronunciation is as such: C before open vowels, A, O, or U is a K sound, and C before closed vowels is an S sound, that being the letter I or the letter E. Also in the grammar section, there are some sections that contain improper grammar. Not only with shoddy conjugations in some places where it either isn't conjugated where it should, or it's conjugated where it shouldn't. There's also a lack of the possessive form owned, be, the prefix, and then the owner. For example, kad, be, boba. They don't include that possessive form. Instead, they have the form be, boba, kad, which is be, owner, owned. It also uses some words incorrectly, as it uses bid, which is so, as thus, when it should be used as a stating of degree. Additionally, the phrase Rud et Sohik that Django famously says to Boba in Attack of the Clones is included as if it is Mando'a in this book, even though this phrase is actually not Mando'a. But that's not important. Now I want to get to the important negative aspects, the cultural aspects. Now this part of the video strays more into opinion territory, but I will say that I firmly believe in Mandalorian cultural values, so my opinions are coming based from that. If you know me, you know how important the culture is to me, and I regret to say that this book really tears it down, and Mr. Mereel inserts his own views and ideology. A vast amount of the new words are biblically related. Now, I wouldn't have a problem with this if it was a glossary for a Bible translation, but it doesn't really belong in a general language dictionary, especially when there are so many of these words. But even if it was just words, that would be fine. But what I think, personally, is unacceptable was the forced inclusion of Mr. Mereel's Christian values into a setting where Mandalorian values should take precedence. I'm not saying that he can't hold those ideals, but to force them into a language and a culture that they don't belong is unsettling, to say the least. He also overuses the gender aspects of the language, as far as changing the saying Gar taldin de jeonish, gar sabuir oriwadasla, which means your bloodline is not important, but you as a parent, very valuable. He changed it to specifically refer to fatherhood, not parenthood, and rather emphasizes the male parent's importance over the females. This is not how Mandalorians think, and this view is based off of Mr. Mereel's real-world biases. And this is not the only case of him doing so. There are a great many words included with sexist, even misogynistic tones, with an emphasis on the lower status of women compared to men, per Mr. Mereel's religious ideals, going so far as to include a word for woman meaning a young, unmarried virgin. This is extremely inappropriate and does not belong in a Mandalorian cultural setting. Such a word wouldn't exist in the Mandalorian mindset. But the last straw was Mr. Mereel's referencing of abortion doctors as demagolka. Demagol being a mad scientist who tortured children in experiments. Now, I don't care what your opinion on abortion is, because it's entirely irrelevant to the language, and this was very inappropriate to include in a Mando cultural dictionary. I must say, this is extremely disappointing. When I found out that someone wrote a book on Mandalorian, I was excited, truly. But Mr. Mereel perpetuates stereotypes, and unfortunately, it ruins the book for me. Hopefully, this will not be the only book written about Mando'a, because if it is, it could give us all a bad image. KT herself already included enough sexist and classist things into the language from her own biases, and there is no need for us to perpetuate them. I will finish this off by restating that these are my opinions, and Mr. Mereel is entitled to his own, but the handling of the language should be done from a culturally relevant, unbiased standpoint, not from real-world politics or religion. I wish I could have given a more positive review, as at the first glance of the book I was optimistic, flipping through the pages looking at the vast wealth of new words, but then I slowly started seeing more and more that were truly not relevant. and I saw what the book truly was, a way for Mr. Mereel to insert his views into the language and the culture. So I hope you enjoyed this review. I have to say that I do not recommend this book. I don't have anything personally against Mr. Mereel, other than the fact that Mandalorian language is of great importance to me, and I've spent a long time working with it. So to see this is disheartening, to say the least. But on a lighter note, I'm just going to get all that out of the way, and I'd like to announce at the end of this video the opening of my Discord server and Patreon page. I'd like to thank those who have already joined, as well as my first patron who got to see this video before it went public. I greatly appreciate your support, and come on out to the Discord server if you need any additional help with Mandalorian, as I am always there, pretty much, to help with that aspect. Anyway, all I have left to say is Ura Torshimi.